Jai Hind, this is Brigadier Hemant Mahajan, and I welcome you to another session of Security Update. In this update, we are going to cover important events that have taken place at national level, which affect India's internal security, which affects India's external security, and the kind of activities done by countries like China and Pakistan, which fall in the area of hybrid war or unrestricted war. So we will try and analyze as to what these events mean, and we'll also try and say as to what exactly can be done to ensure that we are able to protect our national interest even when China is doing all these kind of activities. The first important information is that the latest report of the GDP has come, and India has turned out to be the fastest growing economy in last 1 year with a growth rate of 13.5%, and we have beaten the world's first three economies like the USA, which is number one economy, China, which is number two, European Union, which is number three, Russia is number four, and mind you, Europe is growing at the rate of less than 1%. USA is growing around at the rate of 1%. China is growing even lesser at 0.4%. That is less than 1%. So India has done extremely well. And the second good news today was that India's GDP now has crossed that of United Kingdom, and we have become the fifth largest economy in the world. And it is also forecast that Indian economy is going to grow at more than 7 to 8% in this year. And in fact, all the important stock exchanges have now listed Indian companies on their stock market. In fact, the best news is that there's a index called MSCI Emerging Market Index, in which now we are at number two, just behind China. So basically, what it means is that the slowdown that had started because of Corona now has ended, and India is today growing at the fastest possible speed. So we need to compliment everybody for this good job, because economic strength adds up to your military strength, to your strategic strength. Now, the next issue concerns India's internal security. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses the nation in his what is called as Man Ki Baat. In that, he said that 50% of India's energy production will be met by 2030 by non-fossil fuels, meaning renewable sources of energy like solar, wind power, sea power, etc. And by 2070, we will be a net zero country. This is an extremely important news, simply because while India is able to fulfill all its obligations for reducing the effect of climate change, the Western countries are not able to do it. In fact, I'm sure all of us know that Europe now once again is going for energy generated by coal, simply because the gas which they used to get at a cheap rate from Russia has stopped. So India is fulfilling all its international obligation, while even countries like USA and UK, Europe is not able to do it. The next issue is with regard to the nutrition security. Our nutrition is very important to increase the efficiency of a common man, because if he gets all the required nutrients, then obviously his physical, mental efficiency increases. Now, important issue is that the month of September is being celebrated as a nutrition week, in which we have to ensure that we fight malnutrition in the young girls, young boys, children, or for that matter, everybody. And what has happened is this is called as the Poshan Abhiyan, or the nutrition month. And in this, United Nations has accepted a proposal from India, in which India had said that 2023, that is the coming year, should be celebrated as a year of millets, or year of grains, because it is said that dal, millets, is basically a super nutrient, and the good part is the United Nations has accepted this. So therefore, in this week, the country will focus on nutrition, which will ensure that our human quality index improves further. The next issue concerns guarding the coastal boundaries. The head of Indian Coast Guard, Director General Shri Pathania, has said that just 2 days back they carried out a 10th National Maritime Search and Rescue exercise called as SAREX 2022. It is basically an exercise which validates best practices and procedures to be followed in case of mass rescue operation. Remember, we are at a center stage as far as the Indian Ocean is concerned, and there's a dense traffic of ships that go from our area. The fishing routes are always important for us. So therefore, this agency called as SARS, that is Maritime Search and Rescue Organization, has done a very good service, and the Coast Guard has been able to save more than 11,500 lives which were stranded at sea in last 4 decades. That's a good news. This ensures that our fishermen's security is taken care of. The next issue concerns Make in India or Atmanirbhar Bharat. The good news is that the Cabinet Committee on Security has cleared a project for development of Tejas Mark II. Now, Tejas Mark II is an upgraded version of indigenous light combat aircraft called Tejas Mark I. And after this, the CCS is going to give a clearance for 15,000 crore plus project to build fifth generation advanced medium combat aircraft. Now, what we have to understand is Tejas Mark I took some time to develop, but now there are two squadrons of Tejas Mark I which the Indian Air Force is using, and it is basically going to replace the MiG 21s. Because MiG 21s, I'm sure everybody remembers that we have five squadrons which require to be replaced, and in due course it will be replaced. However, Tejas Mark II is an improvement. There were nearly 5, 6 more improvement Indian Air Force suggested to make it more flexible. Tejas Mark I is basically an interceptor aircraft, while Tejas Mark II will be a better quality aircraft which will be capable of doing multi-roles. So this is expected to come up for manufacture in next 1 or 2 years. And what is important is that the import content of the Tejas is basically 50%, but the most important part there is that we have not been able to build an engine for it. Kaveri engine was the project which we are going in for, but that project has been a failure. So now what do we have to do? What is important is we should involve the private companies, the private corporate world into this sector of research, because they will do a much better job of it. And another good news was that India's first home-built aircraft carrier, INS Vikrant, was commissioned nearly after 17 years of effort by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. Now, nearly 75% of this components of this particular ship or the aircraft carrier has been procured domestically. So that's a very good news. What is important is that initially we were, let's say, importing 70% of our equipment from outside. Now it is dropped down to nearly 40%, and maybe in next 5 to 6 years, 100% of our weapons required by the armed forces will be made inside the country only. Now, India cannot depend upon Russia or, for that matter, anybody. We have to ensure that we build all high-tech equipment, all high-cost equipment in the country only. Make in India will ensure that jobs are generated. It will ensure that the research takes on. It will ensure that our economy prospers. Because what is important is it is expected that in next 5 years, the Indian armed forces are going to procure equipment worth 130 billion. I repeat the figure, 130 billion. So we must ensure that all this is made at home only and not imported from outside. The next issue is Afghanistan and Pakistan region. For the first time, there's an interview which was given by the Afghanistan's acting foreign minister to an Indian news agency. And he basically welcomed India coming back to Afghanistan, giving aid and all. Now, any free aid Afghanistan will always want, but it is important for us to be active in Afghanistan so that we are able to keep a track of what mischief Pakistan is playing there, or what mischiefs is China playing there. So therefore, it is important to have a presence in Afghanistan, and this is exactly what we are doing. We are engaging with them, but up till now, we have not given them any diplomatic recognition. Now, next issue is Pakistan's floods. They have been covered adequately by the media. Pakistan is in such a dire state that they have a very serious problem economically. They have a very serious problem with regard to various kind of freedom movements that are taking place in Pakistan. So Pakistan now wants to import vegetables from India. If they do it, it will help the Pakistani people. But will it stop terrorism which Pakistan is sponsoring in Kashmir? The short answer is no. There's a lot of disputes which are going on between Taliban and Pakistan. Now, Taliban has accused Pakistan of allowing US drones to use Pakistani airspace. And Pakistan, of course, says no, no, it did not do it. So today, Pakistan is faced problems like floods, which has covered nearly 20% of its area, with the civil unrest which is going on almost in 60% of the country, with the increasing violence because of various groups which are there in Balochistan, Sindh, Northwest Frontier Province. It is also trying to take away attention of its people by creating problems in Jammu and Kashmir. So therefore, Pakistan will survive only by raising the Kashmir issue. The next issue is more important, that is the hybrid war activities of China that has followed in this last 1 week. Remember, once again, United Kingdom's Prime Minister Liz Truss has said that she is going to designate China as a acute threat should she get elected, and most probably she will be elected. Remember, in 2015, the then Prime Minister of United Kingdom, David Cameron, had said that there's a golden era between United Kingdom and China as far as the ties were concerned. But in 7 years, they have realized that that their whole country of United Kingdom is being subverted by the Chinese. Similar is the case in many European countries, in many African countries. So therefore, the world is realizing that China is at no good. Now, China's policy of zero COVID is basically slowing down the Chinese economy. Now, China tries to import weapons, etc., to countries, that is well known. But what is not so well known is China's export of private security companies to various countries. Now, why is China sending private security companies, and what are the private security companies doing? As far as private military contractors or private security companies of United States or Russia is concerned, it is well known. We know United States as a private security contractor, which is called Blackwater, or Russia has a private security contractors group called as Wagner Group, which is hyperactive in Ukraine. But about Chinese, there is very little information available. So the latest research shows that there are 700 private security companies which are operating inside China, because China always perceives that their own Chinese people are their enemy number one. And while 20 Chinese private security companies are operating outside China in nearly with a staff of 3,200. Now, what is the risk as far as India is concerned, as far as the Chinese private security are concerned? Now, Chinese private securities are used because then the domestic audience of China doesn't know that the people are there, because if a casualty takes place, the Chinese people are worried and they don't want their armed forces to be used where they'll get killed. China also can deny and say that we have not sent our armed forces anywhere. At times there are legal constraints both outside China and internationally. So therefore, sending private security companies instead of armed forces is a better option, and also it saves a lot of cost, because once you deploy the army, it's a standing army. But private security contractors can be used only when you require them. If the requirement gets over, then there is no need. So therefore, the private security companies are important. We have to ensure that we tell the world around us, especially the Southeast Asian countries, the South Asian countries, that they should not permit the Chinese private security companies to come inside because they misbehave the local crowd. It also means that they have no faith in the armed forces of the country in which they are operating. So, what we should do is we should keep on carrying out research on the Chinese private security companies, tell the world about their activity. Whenever they infringe on the country's laws, those countries must be informed. So, this is proactive information campaign that we must launch on the misdeeds of the Chinese companies. And the countries who try and get the Chinese private security companies should be told that if you want to train your own armed forces, we can help you. If you want to help train your own intelligence agencies or your police, we can help you. But for God's sake, do not let the Chinese private security companies come to your country, because that is what is going to create a serious problem for you. Now, especially the PSCs are active in China, in Pakistan. They are active. They are protecting the China-Pakistan economic corridor there. They are active also in Afghanistan, and they are also active in other countries of South Asia. So we have to ensure that their role in these countries is reduced. The next issue is countering China's maritime insurgency in the South China Sea. Now, there are a lot of experts who feel that this should not be called as an insurgency because China is using its navy, its coast guard, and its private militia in trying to terrorize countries in South China Sea. So instead of calling it a maritime insurgency, it should be called as China's proxy war in South China Sea, because they are using all the instruments of state. Now, what are they doing? They have their private militia, they have their coast guard, and these ships keep on scaring the Southeast Asian navies, Southeast nations ships that are carrying surveys in some areas, or who are trying to drill for oil, like in Vietnam, etc. They stop any drilling activity, they stop any maritime recce activity, they stop patrolling activity, they ram their ships into private ships of the Southeast Asian nation so that they get scared. They do not allow the maritime freedom of navigation through their area. So they are basically bullying everybody, whoever comes to South China Sea. And the world rule is very clear. United Nations Convention on Laws of Seas very clearly states that everybody has a right of navigation inside the sea, except possibly the territorial waters of that country, which are up to 12 nautical miles. So therefore, everybody should be allowed to use the seas. But China doesn't want you to go. They have started building artificial islands, etc. So India will have to work with USA, the quadrilateral cooperation countries, to ensure that this bullying or the proxy war by China in South China Sea and to some extent elsewhere should be stopped, so that the world is able to progress in a more peaceful manner. Now, next issue is with regard to some construction that was observed in near our country's Arunachal Pradesh of Anjav district, in which some digging activity was shown. Now, this digging activity, mind you, was not inside our area, but it was in the disputed area where they were possibly building an helipad. The activity was old, but the videos of this became viral just this week. But what is important here is that today, while we are building roads in the border areas so that we can guard them properly, we can patrol them properly, we are also trying to build up what is called as the model villages so that people stay in the border areas and become eyes and ears of our security forces. But the speed is not up to the mark. The speed of construction of roads, speed of construction of model villages should be faster than the Chinese. The Chinese activities are much faster. So our border road organization and states, various roads that they're building must move at a fast speed especially in the border areas. Now, to conclude, in next 2 minutes, all that I want to say is that there's an economic slowdown that is taking place in China because of initially heat wave, then later floods. So it is benefiting India very, very clearly because the world is looking at India as an attractive investment destination. And because India is growing, India has got skilled manpower, India has got land, India has got youth, India has got natural resources, India has got technical qualifications. So this now actually is proving to be useful, and world is looking at India as an alternative factor. So this is a good information, and not only this, that the portfolio investment flows into the Indian markets in the month of in this month, where in more than $7.6 billion, which is a large money, and today China 22 cities, which let's say account for a lot of China's GDP, have been closed down fully or partially to control corona or the Chinese virus. So therefore, the morale of Chinese people is down. The consumer sentiments are weak. The property sector is having a problem. The technological sector is slowed down, so thereby reducing the scope of investment further. The Chinese economic growth has dropped in the second quarter drastically down to 0.4%. Remember that even this growth of 0.4% has to be taken with a pinch of salt because Chinese statistics are always first. So, which simply means that China maybe even be in the negative area, and China possibly will hit a recession in a short while. China's negative population growth is also creating a problem simply because the housing demand has gone down and all other demands are going down. So therefore, if India can strengthen its manufacturing sector, if India can attract more global investment, then possibly India can become an alternative to manufacturing base of the world. So I'm sure that Indians in all fields will work well, be it startup, be it innovations, be it corporate world, and we will look as an attractive destination for foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment. But for that, we also have to ensure that no bunch take place in our country. Our labor is productive, both skilled labor as well as the unskilled labor. This way it will be ensured that India becomes a better destination and a more of a manufacturing hub than China in the times to come. I'll stop here. Jai Hind.